I've already given you my final opinion on the iPhone 17. Now it's time to talk about the 17 Pro. I've been using it for 3 months, and to be honest, I've actually used it more than the 17. And in this video, I'll try to explain to you why many of my colleagues say that this iPhone 17 Pro is too pro. Did Apple maybe go a bit too far? Is this iPhone 17 Pro, paradoxically, losing its status as a premium iPhone and gradually becoming the iPhone for super demanding videographers? Which, let's be honest, is kind of a niche. Just to remind you, this video isn't exactly a review. We've already talked at length about the 17 Pro in the hands-on sessions and in the buying guide. Here, I really just want to share my opinion with you for those who might buy it before the end of the year, at the beginning of 2026, but also for future buyers, those who will buy it in a year, 2 years, or 3 years. And these are smartphones that sometimes stay interesting for much longer after their release. But before we talk about all that, let me tell you about our sponsor. And our sponsor is perfect for this since it's so lovely. Traveling is great, but sometimes it can be a real hassle, especially with a smartphone. You arrive at the airport, you have to find a shop for a local SIM card. At the hotel, you need to find an old paper clip to take out your SIM. And of course, depending on the country, you have to watch out for scams. Olafly is going to solve all these problems because first of all, it's a travel eSIM. That's more than 200 destinations around the world. And so you won't need to take out your physical SIM. It stays safe and sound. You buy your eSIM, you can install it immediately and use it as soon as you turn on mobile data when you arrive. And what's really a big advantage for Olafly is their unlimited data plan. You can very easily add top-ups if needed. The idea is you won't have to worry about data usage while traveling anymore. They even have a calculator that will allow you to anticipate your data needs before you leave, depending on how you use your smartphone while traveling. Actually, for Olafly, what's really important is that there are no hidden costs, no unpleasant surprises. And what's really convenient with the eSIM and keeping your usual SIM is that you don't need to change your number, especially for WhatsApp. Actually, the eSIM will only handle data during your trip. To get all this set up, buying an eSIM is super simple. Either you go to the Holafly website, eSIM Holafly, eSIM.holafly.com, or you use the Holafly app. The advantage of the app is that it will instantly check your device's compatibility with the eSIM. And so you have 3 methods to install it, either by QR code, manual installation, or if you're on an iPhone with iOS 17.4 or later, there's a one-click installation. And anyway, if you have any problem while you're there, Olafly will take care of everything. They have support available 24/7 through chat and WhatsApp. And by the way, they have a very good trust rating on Trustpilot. They're rated 4.5 with more than 60,000 reviews. So if you have a trip planned soon with your new iPhone, I'll put the Olafly link in the description of this video. If you add the code NOWTECH, you'll get 5% off. And now, let's get back to squeezing this orange. Even though I've already done the hands-on, we need to talk about the design. The design has sparked a lot of discussion. Some people love it, some people hate it. As for me, I have the same opinion as during the hands-on. It's nice, but in the way a truck is nice. Actually, it looks more like a nice tool than a high-end smartphone, because yes, there are nice tools. Personally, I like looking at drills. And this machine tool vibe is really reinforced by the color choices. First, there's this construction site orange, but even the other 2 colors are pretty workwear-inspired choices. You've got a very denim-like blue, as I mentioned before, and then you have the raw finish, the silver finish. What a lot of people noticed is that you don't have that black finish we used to have on the Pros, which was a very premium, very high-end, very luxurious finish. There's also this choice that's both technical and aesthetic using 2 materials, glass and aluminum. It gives a very unique look. Personally, I find that there are design elements that really remind me of the Apple Watch Ultra with its orange button. So here's what I have to say. My opinion on how it feels in the hand, on the ergonomics. To be honest, I rarely held it without its case, but I really like it. Still, this idea of rounded corners, the grip is excellent. We have both flat edges, but no sharp corners except in one spot, and we'll come back to that. In short, whether you like or dislike this design, you can recognize that it's a much more utilitarian design than a high-end premium one. If I had to make an analogy, I would say that the iPhone 17 Pro has the design of a Wall-E, whereas the iPhone R has more of Eve's design, a more minimalist Apple-like design, but actually there's a paradox in this design. They gave up the titanium finish, so we know the technical reason. Titanium dissipates heat less effectively than aluminum, and Apple was terrified of having overheating issues like they had with the 15 Pro or the 16 Pro. The problem is that aluminum has a lot of advantages, but it's a metal that shows wear more easily. So, the real question is it more fragile than other aluminum iPhones? No, it's not more fragile than other iPhones. Aluminum iPhones except in one place, the edges of the camera module. That's something Apple has known about since the iPhone 5. Anodizing, which means putting color on aluminum, doesn't work on sharp angles, or at least it doesn't work very well. I have to admit, I don't understand why they didn't make the edges more rounded, and that's where I say there's a paradox. We have a pretty rugged look, a device that's kind of built for tough environments. You can tell it's going to be durable, it's going to be solid, but there's a real risk of chipping in that spot. Now, as you can see, for me, so far, there's no problem. It's like new. But 99% of the time, I use it with its case for the simple reason that we resell our iPhones a year later so we can test the next ones. So we take extremely good care of them. That will actually allow me to test the new finish of the Apple cases, the tech woven. My first impression is good, but we'll see how it holds up in a year after I've really put it through its paces in my pockets. You can't talk about the design without mentioning the screen, even if that's more about performance. The screen is just beautiful. Actually, it's the one from the 16 Pro that everyone praised, but even better. You get all the smoothness, the LTPO, the 120 Hz, all that stuff. The colors are gorgeous. But where it's a little bit better is in terms of brightness. It goes up to 3000 nits. And it's really impressive in direct sunlight. To give you an idea, on the control screens of professional cameras, that's exactly what you get. 3000 nits. And maybe it's not a coincidence that Apple pushed the screens to make it a real video machine. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I haven't finished talking about the ergonomics yet. This screen is very impressive, but you need to realize something. You're going to find the same screen on the iPhone 17. So, Apple is keeping things a bit vague about an anti-reflective coating that's supposed to be on the Pro and not on the standard. Honestly, I can't see the difference. To finish up on ergonomics, I'm not going to hide it from you. I'm really not a fan of the camera button. I almost never use it. I forget it even exists. On this 17 Pro, given its nature as almost more of a camera than an iPhone, I'd say the camera button can be justified. So, I know that originally Apple mainly designed it for Apple Visual Intelligence, but honestly, do you use Apple Visual Intelligence? Me, not really. So of course, with the iPhone 17 Pro, you expect a powerhouse and you won't be disappointed. The iPhone 17 Pro is very powerful, but it's not that crazy compared to the iPhone 17. So yes, technically on the spec sheet, there's more RAM and we have an extra GPU core. But in practice, when using it, I have a hard time seeing the difference. So maybe the apps aren't there yet. And there's one thing that's certain, and here I'm talking to future buyers. The difference in RAM will be very noticeable. If Apple manages to roll out Apple Intelligence that runs locally, then maybe that will widen the gap between the iPhone 17 and the 17 Pro. But for now, that's not the case. Actually, what you'll notice more than the power is how well it handles heat. And that's what this famous cooling chamber, the vapor chamber, provides. Actually, it's going to be your guarantee that your iPhone 17 Pro will be able to run at full speed for much longer, and that's without major overheating, and that's a real comfort. If you're a power user, whether you play video games intensively or use it heavily as a camera for long shoots, and it's kind of the same when it comes to battery life, just like I said about the performance. It's really good, but it's not amazing compared to the iPhone 17. The iPhone 17 really impressed me with its battery performance. The 17 Pro is better, but not by much. Of course, I'm talking about this size of the iPhone 17 Pro. There's also a max size available. And with that one, yes, you'll get the biggest battery available, but you have to like that kind of size. When it comes to fast charging, you can really feel the difference with the iPhone 17. With the 17 Pro, we were already used to it from the 16 Pro, so here, there's no difference. I was a bit disappointed with the file transfer speed. It's good, but I wish Apple had gone a bit further. When you're working with large video files, even though transfers are fast with USB-C, you'd always like it to be even faster. And since we're getting to video and photography, let's talk about the main part, the big focus of this video. All of its imaging capabilities. And as an introduction, I'll say this. What's a bit strange about the 17 Pro is that it almost feels more like having a camera than having an iPhone. Let's start by talking about the main sensor. So, contrary to what some people have said, The main sensor in the iPhone 17 Pro is not the same as the one in the iPhone 17. We have a wider angle, it's equivalent to 24 millimeters, whereas on the 17 it's equivalent to 26 millimeters. It's not a huge difference, but you can still notice it in comparisons. And strangely, hardware-wise, well, that's not really proper French, but I'll say it anyway. In theory, we have a smaller aperture on the 17 Pro than on the 17s. But actually, we don't really care much about the photo specs. What matters are the results. And here, as you can see in these photos, in a photo taken in broad daylight, under normal photo conditions, there's very, very little difference between a photo on the iPhone 17 and one on the iPhone 17 Pro and even the 16 Pro. There's so little difference that we're doing it again. We're switching the labels. Actually, where smartphone photography has changed a lot in recent years is that it's as much a story of software as it is of hardware. It's really the processing that makes the difference. Smartphone photos are increasingly generated, optimized images. They're less and less purely optical images. And as a result, manufacturers are able to compensate for a lot of what's happening on the hardware side. It's with more demanding photos that we'll start to see differences, especially low-light photos. Here, I'm showing you a comparison between a low-light photo on the iPhone 17 and one on the 17 Pro. You can still see that the 17 Pro is better. You still have to zoom in to really see the difference, but overall just remember that you won't see major differences. It's not night and day, no pun intended, and it's going to be pretty much the same with the ultra-wide angle. Here too, we're going to have the same physical sensor between the 17, the 17 Pro, and the 16 Pro. Fusion ultra-wide, 48 megapixels, equivalent to 13 millimeters, and an f2 aperture. Here too, overall, you're going to get pretty much the same result. We're happy with the 48 megapixel sensor on the ultra-wide cameras. Apple, since the 16 Pro, has been taking the ultra-wide camera a bit more seriously, but the sensor is still a bit small. Personally, I would have liked something bigger. You can especially see it in low light. The processing works hard in the background. Actually, the real difference between the iPhone 17 and the 17 Pro happens elsewhere. First, on the software side, on the iPhone 17 Pro, no matter which camera you choose, you'll be able to shoot in ProRAW at 48 megapixels. You won't have that mandatory 24 megapixel binning that you get with HEIF files. But be careful. That doesn't mean you'll get better photos by doing this. It just means you'll have more flexibility in post-production with your images. When you take your photo in HEIF on the iPhone 17 or the 17 Pro, your iPhone will do all its processing, take a bunch of photos, optimize everything, and give you the best possible photo. What I call a somewhat generated photo, but a very nice one. A photo in ProRAW, on the other hand, you'll get something more raw. On the other hand, you'll get more dynamic range, but the file will be larger and might end up being disappointing. A ProRAW photo isn't necessarily pretty when you first take it, but it's meant to be edited afterward. It's made to be worked on, developed digitally, manually. So, it's something that matters to photography enthusiasts or professionals, but it doesn't really matter much for most of us. And of course, the other huge difference between the 17 Pro and the 17 is going to be the telephoto lens. This year, Apple went with a 4x telephoto lens, but with a large sensor, well, relatively large, 48 megapixels, which will technically allow them to offer an 8x hybrid zoom by cropping on the sensor. The result, and you can see it in these images, honestly, it's really good. It's way better than what we had with the 15 Pro or the 16 Pro. We're going to hesitate a lot less to use the telephoto lens because before, every time we'd think, okay, the photo is with the telephoto lens, but it's still going to be way worse than with the main sensor. Choosing a 100mm equivalent at 4x is more comfortable than 5x because it's true that the 5x sometimes took us a bit too far. We had to step back from the subject. And it's true that this 8x zoom via a sensor crop isn't really an optical zoom, but it gives very good results. And since the sensor is bigger, we get good results in low light. You can go beyond 8x, you can push it up to 40x. But as usual with smartphones, when you push them to the extreme, unless you're a fan of pixel mush, you don't get very interesting photos. Even though they add a lot of artificial intelligence, reconstruct the images and all that, well, it's still a bit of a gimmick. I still did a fun experiment because remember several years ago when they started putting big zooms on smartphones, there was that whole story about fake moons. Last night I was lucky it was a full moon. I filmed the moon with the iPhone 17 Pro. I also took some photos. I don't feel like Apple cheated. That's not a fake moon you see it 40 times. Of course, I had to adjust the brightness because, well, the moon is very bright, but tell me what you think. Do you think Apple is cheating or not with this moon? Personally, I think Apple made some really good choices. I know people will call me an Apple fanboy, but that's okay. I think Apple made choices without giving in to the lure of marketing. They could have easily put in a 5 times zoom and pushed it to 10 times. We could have gone up to 100 times digital zoom, which is something you see a lot in the Android world, but you have to understand that for 100 times or 10 times zoom, you need smaller sensors. Here, Apple tried to prioritize the final quality of its photos to have real consistency. Personally, that's something I've always liked about Apple. They show us images without getting into numbers or spec sheets that we don't really care about. And you can see it in the photos I'm showing you right now, randomly. There's Bordeaux, there's a van, there's Paris, there are night photos, day photos, portraits, both close and far. That's what the iPhone 17 will bring you. A great creative latitude. Having a quality telephoto lens is a lot less limiting. And I'm not like those photographers who will tell you to just zoom with your feet. Zooming with your feet isn't always possible. When you're taking photos of shows, concerts, or sports, you can't always get closer to the subject. So, a good telephoto lens is great, and it's even better for video. Because when it comes to video, I'd like to say something first. I'm perfectly willing to admit that some Android smartphones are better than iPhones when it comes to photography. However, when it comes to video, once again this year, Apple crushes the competition. And to understand that, you have to look beyond the spec sheets a little bit. Any video professional will tell you this. With video, it doesn't work exactly like it does with photography. It's not just about optics and sensors. There are very important things in image processing, bitrate, codec choices, stabilization. There are a lot of other factors that determine the final quality of a video. And here, the quality really delivers. I was already impressed by the videos from the iPhone 15 Pro and the 16 Pro. Now, having a brighter telephoto lens will give us even more flexibility. The action mode, the stabilization, it's incredible. On this iPhone 17 Pro, you'll get 4K at 120 frames per second, which will allow for a slightly more cinematic look. Here too, we see Apple resisted marketing pressures. They could very well have done 8K with the iPhone 17 Pro, but 8K on this sensor size is a little bit ridiculous. I'm not saying that 8K isn't good, but you need to have a large sensor. And here I'm showing you some images again, especially from a show. By the way, let's give a little shout out to Sarah. Images from concerts, images from far away. Being able to get different shots like this with stabilization, as I said, is impeccable. A telephoto lens that gives the images a beautiful, cohesive look. You can zoom in, zoom out, you won't see the difference. That's something creatively and for video, that's really great. And to be honest, for me, Apple could have stopped there, but no, they decided to go even further. They put features in the iPhone 17 Pro cameras that are ultra pro, even for video professionals. So you have things like Log 2, we're going to use that. Log 2 is an image format that allows you to have images with much more dynamic range, but as a result, the colors are very flat. There's more contrast. The colors are actually brought back later in post-production, as you're seeing right now. That's really something important for video production. It allows us to match footage from an iPhone with footage from other cameras. Then they added something else. ProRes. They had already done it, but now we have ProRes RAW. ProRes RAW is an insane format. It's very impressive to get that onto an iPhone, but those files are absolutely gigantic. By the way, you won't be able to record them internally. You'll need to add a hard drive to your iPhone Pro, so it's no longer just a smartphone or even an iPhone. It's basically a camera now. They've added things like time code, like Genlock, which lets you make a lot of cameras work together, features that will allow you, for example, to do bullet time. To do that, you'd need to buy many 17 Pros. You won't do that on vacation with Aunt Danielle, right? I actually wonder who will really use these features. Well, we have an answer. We know that Apple is going to use this to produce their promos with iPhones. From time to time, we'll see movies or movie scenes that are shot with iPhones. People working in scripted productions and film are thrilled to have such an inexpensive crash cam because I swear to you, it's not expensive for a crash cam. But here, we're still talking about a super niche market. Here, I'd say if Apple did this, it's mainly so they can talk about it in their marketing. It's not really going to be useful for you. Of course, you also have to include the excellent selfie camera in the mix. I'll go into much more detail about it in my review of the iPhone R, but I still wanted to show you an example. A bit of a vlogging example with the famous 2-image overlay that you can now do natively. And by the way, this will also let you hear the good quality of the iPhone's microphones. There was a lot of wind where I was in Brittany, and yet you can still clearly hear my voice. There's a bit of wind, as you can see from my hair, so you'll notice that. The ground is full of rocks, so it's normal that it's shaking. Well, here you hear it with some wind, so I don't know how it sounds, but I think it's good enough for a little vlog. Which once again makes the iPhone 17 Pro an excellent vlogging camera, but well, you'll also have this selfie camera on the 17 and the R, so it's not a major factor. So, in terms of photo and video, I'm really happy with the 17 Pro, happy to have a good telephoto lens, but still, the price difference is 360 euros just to get a telephoto lens. I think this year, the hardest choice will be choosing between the iPhone 17 and the 17 Pro for most of you. So, it will depend on your imaging priorities and the kind of content you want to create. And this choice will be difficult, by the way, not just for photo and video. This year, what stands out about this iPhone launch is that there's very little difference between the 17 and the 17 Pro, except for a big price difference. Before, the choice was easy. The Pro was always the premium one. It had a lot more features than the standard. And actually, you can see it through some design choices and certain technical decisions. Apple no longer wants the iPhone Pro to be the premium iPhone. Actually, this year, Apple would have liked us to see the iPhone R as the real premium iPhone, the one that got their best design work. What they wanted to do with the Pro was to give it the best imaging features. Is this a marketing choice they're going to stick with in the future? Will the Pros remain great camera phones, and will we have a more premium line that starts with the R, which will probably continue with folds? Only time will tell. Well, since my job is to produce images, I'm a content creator. The 17 Pro suits me very well. I'd even say it's overkill. If Apple had released a 17 with a telephoto lens, that would have been the best choice for me. And I'd even say that if I didn't work for a tech channel that buys iPhones every year to test them, I would be very happy. With a 15 Pro, or even with a 14 or a 13 Pro, I really liked the 13S, the 14S with their stainless steel finish. They were beautiful. And the 11 with that deep green, that was the most beautiful iPhone. Do you want us to make a tier list of iPhones from the past 20 years? I hope this video has shed some light for you. Anyway, that's my opinion, my now-tech take on the iPhone 17 Pro. If you're still unsure about the models, which is understandable, let me remind you. Once again, we've made a very comprehensive buying guide on this year's iPhones and also on iPhones from previous years to help you figure out what your needs really are. I was about to wish you a Merry Christmas, but we'll meet again before then. See you very soon in the next video, which should be quite the breath of fresh air. Hey, hey, hey.